This is not ASMR.
Hey.
Hey,
we just saw a movie. This is Michelle.
This is Josh.
And we just watched Blindspotting.
That's right. The 2018 film directed by Carlos Lopez Estrada. That's right.
Got all the names.
And I said it correctly, too.
We think.
A movie that didn't get much shine. Not a lot of people probably even knew it got released.
Yeah, I was surprised to see, I googled Blindspotting movie awards, and it didn't really have any.
No.
So,
I remember at the time we tried to see it on MoviePass, but that's when MoviePass was doing all their dastardly stuff.
MoviePass.
And then also it wasn't really playing at too many places. And so, yeah, it was just hard to see. We never got a chance to see it. And then it just disappeared pretty much. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to end up on Netflix or Hulu or something. And then it finally ended up on HBO recently. So that's where we watched it.
HBO Go.
So, what have you been up to?
Baking cookies.
Oh, okay.
Making popcorn.
Gotcha.
I got a puzzle. You see, it's on the floor. I just started it. Can I tell you?
Threw it on the ground.
It has been, I tried to think because I asked you, when's the last time you did a puzzle? Because when we got into this lockdown, I immediately thought, I need a puzzle. That's what you do when you can't go anywhere, right? If it's raining really hard, or if there's bad weather, or you're snowed in, there's always a puzzle, at least like movies and TV stuff, right? Like, I don't know, I immediately thought I needed a puzzle. Couldn't find one forever. Finally found one, got my 1,000-piece puzzle in, and then I remembered how freaking hard puzzles are.
That's why I told you I never wanted to do a puzzle with you.
I know.
Or anyone.
And then that made me think, when is the last time I've done a puzzle? And it's definitely not within the last 16, 17 years we've been married. Or the last 20 years we've been together. So this must have been high school, junior high, the last time I did a puzzle.
You could have done a puzzle without me while we were dating.
No, I could have, but I'm saying I didn't.
Okay.
I was in college. I was hanging out with my roommates.
I had better things to do than knit a scarf and do puzzles.
No, I have knitted a scarf. Not in college, but I did knit a scarf at some point during our marriage. And I gave it to my friend.
Gotcha.
And I swear I would never do it again.
You shouldn't.
But hopefully...
Don't do anything that's hard.
Hopefully once I finish this puzzle, I won't feel that way. I enjoy puzzles. I enjoy the challenge. I just forgot. It's just a lot of sorting this pile of pieces and then sorting it again and then sorting it again. Which is fine.
If it makes you feel any better, it's like being a paleontologist.
Oh, I guess so.
You're sifting and sorting.
Yeah.
Hoping.
You're sifting
and
sorting.
And putting. And hoping.
Yeah. So, anyway, but I like my puzzle. It's got a cat on it.
That's good. Cats are good. Friend of the show, Sean Kantrowitz, he's made a joke that he was surprised that I let you have a cat, even if it was a puzzle cat.
Yeah.
But I said this cat doesn't poop, so
it's fine.
It's fine.
It was allowed in the house.
That's right. And also the building managers don't want that. So what I was up to was I cooked a whole chicken.
You did. You cooked a whole chicken.
A chicken. Shout out to that chick from The Craft. So I cooked a whole chicken and then I used the broth. So essentially I just did a chicken jacuzzi, and then used its own water to make soup. And then I made egg noodles from scratch. They were a little thick, but it worked out. So I've been wanting to do this for 30 years. So
the goal was homemade chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was quasi homemade. I was afraid of the broth, the flavoring, so I added half of store-bought broth. But the broth that I made with the store-bought broth didn't taste weird, so
it was good.
It came out okay. And that's what I've been up to.
I forgot we had a lot of baking, from scratch stuff going on.
What did I bake from scratch?
Days. Not you, but you made
you didn't do anything, but
no, you made the noodles and you made soup from scratch from a whole chicken.
Yeah.
And then
from scratch. There was a chicken involved. A dead chicken.
Right. But that morning we had run out. We're out of our pancake mix, so I made pancakes from scratch.
That's right.
And they were not like the yummy store-bought ones we've been having.
I think the only quote-unquote problem with them is that they weren't sugary enough. That's probably that's really the only difference. The other ones just taste
They're
more sugary.
sweeter, but the other ones are fluffy. These weren't fluffy. These felt like dense, but it's okay. They tasted fine.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with them.
Yeah, I preferred the store ones better. So I'm going to try a different recipe next time.
Gotcha. We've been watching a couple of things. We watched SNL this weekend, the second stay-at-home SNL. It was very funny.
It was very funny.
The What's Up With That was funny. Jason Sudeikis showed up, did his classic dance.
What's up with that? What's up with that? What's the rest of the song? It's just what's up with that?
Yeah, but
What's
not
up with
that
that?
way.
How is it?
I'm not going to do it.
Whatever, man.
Ooh wee! What's up with that? Oh, what's up with that? Say it. Ooh wee! Okay. Ooh wee! Yeah, we watched SNL. That was cool. We started watching Middleditch and Schwartz yesterday. Somehow they have 10-hour-long, 2-person, long-form improv.
I had
episodes.
very low expectations when we came across this on Netflix.
I didn't know
really
what was going to come out of it.
Surprisingly funny.
Yeah, it was. I recommend it to everyone.
And they get their cardio in, like running all over that stage.
And Schwartz does not really like remembering names. Was it Middleditch? One of them didn't like remembering names. I think it was Schwartz.
Schwartz, yeah.
They kept
he was
coming
like,
up with more
come on,
names,
man.
and then Schwartz was
Yeah.
like, "Can we stop coming up with names?"
And then he couldn't get the accents right. And
No.
It was funny.
We tried to watch Midnight Gospel, which happened to be a Dr. Drew show. So then I said, Dr. Drew says crazy
that's
things
right.
sometimes. I don't know if we want to support him with a watch, but we'll see.
We finished The Sinner.
Yeah,
It's a weird season.
Yeah,
I liked it and I didn't.
We like what's his name? I'm thinking of the guy who just died, a while ago. No, yeah, it's Bill Paxton, right? No,
Bill Pullman.
Bill Pullman. Bill Pullman's character. I felt sorry for him the last 2 seasons, and this season I'm like... Ugh.
This season, it was cringy. I just was so annoyed with his character this whole season.
Yeah, so that's what we've been up to.
Shall we get to our movie?
Let's get to it.
All right. So, like we said, we saw Blindspotting, 2018 flick. Let's read the IMDb single sentence synopsis.
Classic.
It's always one sentence.
And another one.
Okay, so Blindspotting. While on probation, a man begins to reevaluate his relationship with his volatile best friend. I don't know. I think he reevaluated a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Not just the best friend.
I think that's probably one of the best synopsis that you've read off IMDb.
Really?
Yeah, it actually says what's going on. It's not like
yeah.
a man goes through a series of things while other things happen. Like, what? That could be any movie.
Thanks for the vagary.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I would say life tries to set you up, but you need to not fall for it. That would be my lesson synopsis.
Life tries to set you up, but don't fall for it.
Yeah. I said you need to not fall for it.
Oh, sorry.
But
I condensed it into a movie poster.
yeah.
Plot line.
Movie poster, yeah.
Movie poster, subline. What is it? Subhead?
Subhead, yeah.
Yeah.
Cuphead.
All right. Well, I think I may have included the fact that he was on his last 3 days of probation. That adds like the urgency to what's happening.
That's true.
Because that's what had me on edge this entire movie. I came into this. Here's a question. I think I know your answer. I know your answer. But listeners, think on this. Do you prefer to go into a movie knowing the plot and like the general what's happening? Or do you prefer to go into a movie blindly? No idea.
Blindspotted.
Yeah, no idea. You like to go in blind, don't you?
Yes. Because my brain starts unraveling the pieces and starts navigating down I'm like, my thought process is like the bronchial tubes. It just like starts branching off, so I can quickly start figuring out through movie history and through my own thoughts and what they showed me, what's likely to happen.
Well, that's a good point because the only thing I could not remember what this movie was about exactly. The only thing I could remember from the previews was that he witnesses someone get shot by the police. And
I didn't even know that part.
And that's all I could remember. So my brain, preconceived notions from movies we've seen forever, is I was so nervous the whole movie that he was A, gonna get shot by the cops, or B, he was gonna blow his parole and end up back in jail. So the whole movie, I was just like tense. I was like, all right, he's got like 8 hours to go. Go home, man. You need to, don't miss your curfew. Like, I was so nervous the whole movie.
Yeah.
Because I'm so, like all these other movies, like he would have, I thought it was going to be more centered around what he witnessed and that whole thing. I thought it was going to be like the cops were going to come for him and like, I thought it was going to go that way. I didn't know it was really not about that. It was about how it affected him and like how he was dealing and stuff. But so, yeah. So, but I do like to know what's going on because I feel like since I didn't really know, I should have watched the preview beforehand to remind myself. So I was sitting there worried about these other things the whole time. And then it was over and I was like, oh, good. It wasn't the movie that I thought it was.
I pretty much got what I thought it was, at least the basics, like what you read in the thing, that him and his friend have this relationship. His friend is crazy. And him having to kind of deal with that.
Yeah.
As a black man and his friend being a white man. So what I thought it was on that front is exactly what it was. So
Okay.
it wasn't too surprising. I think, yeah, the whole 3 days probation thing, because I knew he was on probation. I just didn't know how much time he had left. So I thought it was going to be like the whole time that he's on probation or something, that he's got this friend that's acting crazy. But when it was, you said 3 days, once it's condensed to 3 days, it makes it even more stressful. So the whole movie, I was just worried about this dude because he kept getting himself into weird situations.
It was always like he was almost gonna like get messed up by curfew. And then he was like around people who were doing stupid things. And like he was always like right on the line.
Right.
He wasn't doing anything and he was being very careful for him not to do anything. And he tried to not, like he was tried to remove himself from situations and it didn't 100% work.
Right. Yeah, I think it's like people always say, it's the environment you're in, and it's hard to leave the environment and the friends that you have. I thought when that cop murdered that guy, that I thought that's where everything was going to go like south for him. I thought that was going to be a signal of like, hey, you saw this and now kind of like Queen and Slim. Like I thought it was going to be like, oh, now the cops are after him and going to try to plant stuff on him and try to, get him in some sort of way. And I was surprised that didn't happen.
Yeah, me too.
I thought for sure that guy was going to go looking for him. But, that I think that was the interesting part of the movie. Everything that you thought that was going to happen, that's happened in every other movie, didn't happen in this movie. Like he didn't get caught by the cops.
Yeah, nothing in this movie felt predictable.
He didn't get pulled over, none of that stuff. He, at the beginning of the movie, so he's on this probation, he has to be in by 11, and he's got 3 days left, and he can't leave the county, which is, surprising. I didn't know you couldn't leave, I knew you couldn't leave the state and stuff like that, but I didn't know you couldn't leave sometimes the county that you were in. So he's stuck at this red light and he's waiting for the light to change. And this is actually when the murder happens, right? At the red light. But it turns green, and right as it turns green, the guy who gets murdered runs past his truck. But I thought the whole time what was going to happen, he was going to run the red light and then they were going to get him on these like minor charges.
Yep. That's what I expected to happen. I kept yelling at the TV, don't go, don't go, don't go. Thought he was going to run the red light.
So it was like all the things that he was doing weren't really the issue. It was more his relationship with his friend.
Yeah.
That was the biggest issue, because his friend is... So it's interesting. I think that makes me think about like culture versus like gentrification or copying or what's the word everybody uses now? It's been around forever, but like when the Kardashians,
Well, they
look,
say they're blackfishing.
black, yeah,
But also a
blackfishing.
phrase I
But
heard
what's
in the
but
movie, he said, there's a culture vulture.
yeah, culture vulture. But there's the appropriation.
Oh, yeah.
So
The official word, I
yeah,
guess. The dictionary word.
you know, this guy seems kind of like he's appropriating, I guess, black culture or whatever. But he's somebody who's lived in that city forever, and that's just his culture. So I think it's an interesting thing when you have to, when you try to judge someone or look at someone about how they are, but you don't really know their background because, like, I have a friend who is Japanese and Polish, but he grew up in San Antonio around mainly Mexican people. So culturally, he has a lot of Mexican culture. And I bet if someone ran into him and, maybe they were Mexican and interacted with him, they would think, like, what's up with this dude?
Right.
But not knowing he's from San Antonio, and, like, that's just kind of the culture. The Mexican culture is infused in San Antonio. So you can't really not, in some ways, depending on where you live, and get away from that is a horrible term, but get away from it. And I think that's what his friend was like. But the funny thing is his friend, under stereotypes, was quote unquote harder than he was and had the grill and, had all the tattoos, and was willing to fight.
Yeah.
All that type of stuff. So, and I think it even it's funny when it plays out at the end at the hipster party when that black guy is like, hey, you don't have to talk like this.
Well, that was like the pivotal. I don't know if we want to go there yet or not, but
I was just going to reference it.
Oh, okay. Just reference it. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, but I think that like goes to the later scene when the black dude at the party, at the hipster party, tells Miles, his friend, let me reference the people. Colin is the main character, and then Miles, his friend, the guy at the party tells him, hey, you don't have to talk like that. You don't have to be like that. You can just be yourself. And there's a funny thing because both the guy who is telling Miles to stop acting, I guess, black, is assuming that he's not from Oakland.
Right.
And then Miles, I think, it was assuming that that guy wasn't from Oakland because they were both at like a hipster party. Right?
I don't know if Miles was making the assumption, but the guy definitely was assuming that Miles was a transplant.
Because I know Miles was definitely came into that party very confused about all the hipsters that were in there.
Yeah.
And so, it's just kind of interesting when you kind of like point fingers and like, oh, this person doesn't know what's happening.
Right.
Like, I think, like I saw, once again, shout out to Sean Cantwit's questions, trivia. He had Dante Ross on there, who's is a figurehead in hip hop. But I think he's just like a Jewish guy, like a 50-year-old Jewish guy, and you look at him, he has, some swag or whatever, but people would look on the street and he'd be like, hey, this white guy, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the reason why you have this, I'm a part of the reason why you have this culture. Like, I helped put all these people on and made all these moves, so it's just interesting. Yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover, and I think that was one of the cool things about this movie, was just showing the culture versus like the outside culture is trying to influence. And I think that was the B story of this, really, was gentrification.
Yeah, I feel like overall the theme was, if you could give it an overall thing, it was like change. Mm-hmm. And yeah, gentrification was a big part of it. Gentrifying
yourself.
Exactly. I put that together when he was talking about, one of them was talking about gentrifying the neighborhood, and I was like, Colin is gentrifying himself because he was changing from the neighborhood, from his old self, right? He was embracing new things like the green juice and like not doing the stuff he used to do, smoke weed. I don't know if he carried a gun or whatever, but he was like slowly becoming something different, which is what the neighborhood was doing, was slowly becoming something different. And you don't want to say better or worse, but just different.
I think there's a middle ground though when you mix cultures. I think it's a delicate balance, but you've got to the people who are coming in, you got to embrace them. And if you're coming in, you have to know, like, this is somebody else's territory, and you got to learn their way of things and embrace their way of things and offer up a different perspective, but also look at their perspective.
Right.
And I think kind of like the corner store had, like, they had the normal corner store stuff, but they also had
that one little cooler of green juice.
And the sad thing is, over time, that corner store will probably just become some sort of big hat store or something.
Big hat store?
Coachella store or something like that. But, you know, the food will slowly change, and they're somewhat for the better. But I think just being able to mix and embrace cultures and not just say, oh, you have in the beginning, they had a really tall bike guy riding his bike, but then they had a dude popping wheelies on a BMX bike. And so it's kind of like old Oakland versus new Oakland. But I was thinking, can't both of those crews ride together and cruise throughout Oakland and not be like, oh, his bike's weird, or you eat this weird food, you eat that weird food. It's like, you know, have some staple Oakland food and then have a green juice.
Just
like, what's
eat
the
together.
Problem?
Yeah.
Like, I moved from a big town to a small town, and I could have been the person who said, hey, you guys are dumb and you're backwards people, and I'm going to show you, like, what's cool. But I was like, oh, country music, what's that? Let's listen. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. Why not? I'm like, oh, rock music. All right, cool. You know.
You embraced our little town.
That's right. I embraced it.
So, we have segments. Oh, we didn't say the name of the other segment. We're trying to get segments, y'all. We've talked about it. But we're going to add a segment about, I don't think I want to call it trivia, but I don't have a name for it yet. But it's...
Trivial.
Movie facts.
Trivial facts.
Yeah.
Trivial Pursuit facts.
So, interesting things I learned about this movie. That's a long title, but that's what I'm calling it. Okay. Did you know... That's what we should call it. Did you know? Did you know that the two stars, Colin and Miles, played by David Diggs and Raphael Casel?
Cassell.
I don't know your last name, dude. But Raphael are real childhood best friends. What? They grew up together in Oakland. Well, Raphael lived like on the border. He was technically, I think, lived in Berkeley, but he was like right there on the border at Oakland. And David was in Oakland, and they grew up together, and they wrote this movie over 9 years in the 2000s.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Hey, so for all you people out there who are hating on your friends who haven't finished their half of it, maybe it'll just take a while.
Takes a while. Also, this movie took a long time to get made because David was busy doing Hamilton. So
that'll get you.
Yeah, so finally their schedules matched up, and they were able to film this movie in 22 days. And they knocked it out, and then it was released in 2018.
It's like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I was watching something...
3 weeks. 22 days. 21 days is 3 weeks. So.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. I was watching something, they were talking about some crazy movie that was filmed in 5 weeks. And it obviously showed in the film. Here's a fact. Factoid. What'd you say it was?
You have facts too?
I have one.
I said interesting things I learned about this movie.
No, you had something way shorter than that.
I said, did you know?
Yeah, did you know? Did you know that the director, Carlos Lopez Estrada, is possibly going to be directing the live action of Robin Hood? He met with Disney, and Disney was like, what's up? Funny thing is, he's young. He's only 31.
The director's only 31?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So he was like 28 or so when they made this movie.
Blindspotting was his first film.
Yeah.
Directorial debut.
That's right.
Film-wise. But his background is music videos, which makes a lot of sense because in the middle of this movie, there was a scene happening. And I was like, this looks like a music video.
Yeah. And there was rapping and poeming.
Right. So that all makes sense.
Slams.
Right. And Raphael's background is poetry, deaf poetry. He was on TV. He was on deaf poetry for a lot of years. So that all seems like that all came together beautifully for this movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a hard time with poetry, slam, I have a tough time with poetry in general, but most of the time I'm like, huh?
Well, so would you say what he did in the movie? Because I know a lot of times they were like, So there's like rapping and then there's poetry, but it seems like it goes to like
That's
it's
kind of
the
like what
same
poetry
thing.
slam is.
Yeah, so poetry slam.
I think.
So was he rapping in the movie or was he poetry slamming?
I think if you put a beat on it and you rap consistently with a flow, it's rapping. But when your cadence is changing randomly and you're sometimes not even rhyming, then I think it falls under poetry
So
slam.
at the very end.
Like when it sounds like you're a beatnik, it's probably poetry slam.
Okay. Well, so at the end though, that scene, the really intense scene with the cop, that felt more poetry.
That was poetry, and then the beat came on, and he kind of rapped, and then he went back into like poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always been a tough thing for me. The only person that I've heard live that I actually liked was Malcolm Jamal Warner. I was like, dude, I'm not. I told him I'm not a big fan of poetry slams and poetry in general. I was like, I like what you did. He was like, I appreciate that. He's like, some people it's just not for them. I'm like, yeah,
Right. It's not their
it's
thing.
not, but that was good, and I liked a lot of things I heard him do. So, other than that, I'm like, I haven't really heard anybody where I'm like, I like that.
So did you like those scenes in this movie?
I understood them. I understood why
Okay.
they were there. It's just for me personally, it took me out. Like, if for the most part, if we're watching a movie that's a musical, not unless it's Singing in the Rain, I feel like that's the only musical I like. Every other time, I'm like, oh, can we just move? Can you express yourself in any other way?
Why do you have to sing all these words?
I think it's just the back and forth. It just takes me out of the element.
Okay.
I feel like if you're doing an opera, it's just singing the whole time. Like, oh, okay.
Opera.
I'm not saying I like operas either. I'm just saying you're at least singing the whole time. But when you're like, Jim, should we buy this car? And like, I don't know. And it's like, should we buy this car? And I'm like, why? Why are we singing about buying the car? Just say, nah, we shouldn't buy this car.
What opera was it? What did we watch? Was it Porgy and Bess?
No, you're talking about the whale? About
No, the whale, maybe.
Moby Dick?
But they were, yeah, like you're saying, like they were literally just singing their lines, and it was frustrating for me.
I think Moby Dick was frustrating. Porgy and Bess was fine. We were just sitting too far away.
The whale.
No, I can't.
The whale.
We went to the first ever live production of Moby Dick, the opera, and we were like, what?
We went to support our friend.
Yeah.
And also,
shout out to James Goodley.
Hey, James.
He's not on the phone or anything.
It was, opera's not my thing, really. But it was a pretty cool stage production.
Oh, yeah.
The staging was cool.
It was one of the first, kind of
projection mapping-ish.
Yeah. And they did the Ka thing. Remember, people were sliding down
the wall. Yeah.
All that type of stuff. So it was one of those first productions where they started using, projection mapping and all sorts of stuff that's anti, establishment. I'm sure
Right.
old people are like, oh, my pearls.
Why are you ruining opera? Okay, so what I figured out, though, what I realized once now that I know that these two guys are real friends and real childhood buddies, and in the movie, there were a lot of scenes of them sort of like walking down the street or like going about something, and they would break into a rap, poetry, whatever. And they would go back and forth. And now that I know that they were childhood friends, I wonder if that's something they actually did. Like they pulled that from their life. That they would just walk down the street together. Because if this guy is a poetry guy and then, I don't know what David's whole thing is, but he was in Hamilton and he's a rapper.
Well, in
obviously.
Everything I've ever seen him in, he either raps or does
Poetry.
slam poetry.
So I feel like these guys just really did walk down the
That's
street.
just who they are.
Rapping their lives and poetrying their lives.
Rap lives.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really low budget thing about like Tupac and Biggie.
Rap lives.
That got put on
Lifetime?
No. Prime Video. One of those like 4.5 45%.
Okay, what else do I have about this movie? I have that overall it made $5 million. That's not nothing. It probably didn't cost very much to make.
I don't know. 5 million's pretty low.
So there was the girl, his Miles' girlfriend or wife. They never really say, but she was also in Hamilton, And also, they got the drummer from Hamilton to work
Get a drummer song.
to work on the score of this film.
I barely remember the music. I was mainly just like, oh my goodness, what's about to happen?
I feel like it blended very well with the movie. There was nothing weird about it, and it felt like it fit in with the story.
That's what I tell my students. They're like, did that sound good? I'm like, I didn't hear anything weird, so that's a good thing.
I didn't hear anything bad.
Yeah,
sure.
so that's a good start.
So did you have any favorites of this movie? Favorite scenes, favorite characters, whatever?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing was, well, I guess it wasn't my favorite thing. It's like my favorite, not favorite thing. I think when, what's his name? I forgot his name, but in Mindy Project, but Mindy's brother.
Mindy's brother.
Yeah, that actor. He comes into the moving place that they work at, and Colin's about to go out and work, and this dude comes in. He's like, "Oh, aren't you that dude?" And he's like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, you are." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I am." And the guy's friend goes, "Who is he?" He's like, "Oh, you don't know? This guy, like, he..."
I think they called him the Scorpion King.
Yeah, something like that. And so he proceeds most of the movie. You have no idea why he's on probation, and you have no idea why his coworker who got him the job at the moving place and ex-girlfriend, why they're broken up. And the guy proceeds to tell this hilarious but sad story about how he and it goes back to the gentrification thing. This guy gets a drink, like this flaming drink at the bar. And then if you've ever been in a bar, you know you're not supposed to take the drinks outside. The guy takes the drinks outside. And then he tells the guy, hey, bring your drink back in. The guy doesn't want to and starts kind of like saying some salty stuff to him. And, you know, it's like some random guy from Portland or wherever he moved from moving into Oakland. And so he's kind of pompous about it. And he pushes Colin, and then Colin kind of loses it and then just starts beating the dude. The drink falls to the ground. Miles, his friend, starts kicking the dude in his ribs, like way more than Colin's even punching him. The two guys are choking each other, and then both of them catch on fire, and the guy who had the flame drink on him got burned really bad and also was like in a coma for a week. And so he tells this crazy story about it. And the thing that was so funny, sad to me is like, that's how most people perceive other real people's lives, as if it's a TV show. He was just telling the story like, oh, it was funny and it's great. And it's like, first of all, someone ended up in the hospital. Second of all, another person attacked a person. That person who I would assume, if you were thinking about it, probably had to do time for that or something. So there's nothing really funny about it. And, you know, it's not a movie. I think like when people, it's, you know, everybody wants to joke about Carol Baskin and she killed her husband and all, but she was a real person. Like going onto her property and making t-shirts and
making t-shirts, Carol
and
Baskin
showing up at her house, you know, all those things are, you know, that's not really funny. I don't know the woman. I just know what Netflix presented. And so it's just like, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like when Spike Lee tried to give the address of George Zimmerman's house, and it was not George Zimmerman's house. And anyway, that was a horrible idea to begin with. Right. But it's just like, sometimes people don't realize there are actual real people behind crimes and murders and mistakes and all these type of things and speculation. So I thought that scene was pretty telling. And then he called them, he goes, he was like, this dude, he said, this dude looks like Crazy Bone. And then
I don't know who Crazy Bone is.
He's from Bone Thugs. He has the braids.
Oh, okay.
And then they quote like some Crazy Bone lyrics. And then he says they're describing while they're fighting on the ground. He goes, He's like, so Michael B. Jordan and Chris Evans are on fire, like, referencing the white guy.
Well, this was one of the things I loved about that scene is because the guy telling the story, the guy from Indie Project, he keeps referencing the guy that's being beaten up, the customer who bought the flaming drink. He called him like 15 different people's names. He called him Topher. He called him, all the names just flew out of my head. But any other random white actor,
right?
He called him that name. So every time he referenced him, it was just funny. Yeah,
just switching names of random white actors.
Right. So that was funny. But then also, because I like this scene too, this was on my list of notables. And the sad part, another sad part to it was that, so Colin, he's 3 days from parole. You can tell he's been working really hard to stay like straight and narrow, wants to change his life. And then we find out his coworker's maybe boss is his ex-girlfriend. Then we kind of find out that they broke up because of this fight. And so he's been trying to change and he's been trying to help her see him differently. And then this dude just walks into the store and replays the whole thing in front of her. And you just see he is like, no, man, stop. Like, we don't need to do this. And he's like looking at her and watching her face change, going from like, you could tell she had kind of like been warming up to him and was like, happy for him to be finally off parole. And then this guy comes in and reminds her the whole reason she didn't want to be around him or didn't want to at least be with him anymore. Right. So it was sad to see that whole thing. And then that actually played in later where he asks her, like, the first thing when you look at me is the first thing you see is that fight. And she couldn't really answer. Because I'm guessing it's sort of yes.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because I think that was a really interesting moment that I don't see too much in movies. And so with that, like they came up with, she's studying for a psychology test or something like that. And I forgot the test where you see either a lamp or a candlestick or you see two faces.
It's a vase.
Yeah, vase. Whatever.
The vase face.
So she said to help her remember what it was called, she used the word blindspotting. And she said, you know, the way you first see something, you can't get that out of your head, even if you find out it's something else. And so he references that when he says, when you see me, do you always see the fight? Because she walked out as he was like patting the fire off of him and the guy's bleeding on the ground. And it makes me think about how many types of relationships end where something just happens where you're now blind spotted. Like you can't see it any other way. If you first see, like she's saying, if you first see the vase, that's the way you always see it. If you first see the faces, that's the way you see it. And I think a lot of relationships have ended that way because something happened like force majeure, where it's just kind of like,
right,
all I see is you were running.
Right.
You know, or all I see is when you cheated, or all I see is when you gambled away our money, or all I see is when I needed you, you turned your back on me, or whatever, in any relationship. And I thought that was really interesting because no one really talks about that. Often we talk about forgiveness, or we talk about somebody just either quitting or saying they don't want to do this anymore, but not really the psychology behind it. Mm-hmm. Where it's just like, I can't really look at you anymore because every time I see you, I see a liar. It doesn't matter how nice you are or how in the future or now you're so
and that can
truthful.
Change, but that's the reality.
That can, it can change.
Where the perspective is at that time.
But once that happens, it's like she said, it's very hard to change that perspective. So I thought that was pretty poignant. Since
we're talking about blind spotting, I was thinking about how, because it was all about having a blind spot to things, because you see things one way first. And I think that Colin had a blind spot for Miles.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Because he was just, we're best friends. He's always been there for me. And he's kind of blind to the fact that your best friend got you into all this trouble. Or dug you deeper, at least.
Right.
He didn't make you start the fight, but he definitely egged it on. He didn't pull you off the guy.
Right.
He jumped in. And so we kind of see throughout the movie, like, different... And Miles is the one that he buys a gun. And Colin keeps telling him, like, I cannot be around that gun, but he just keeps carrying it. So he's kind of blind to the fact that his friend is not really being a friend. Right. Not really being a good friend anyway. Because he keeps defending Miles and continues to, you know, it's basically Miles's family. And you can see that when he goes over there and he, like, hangs out with Miles's kid, Miles's wife or whatever. And they're, like, a big family. So he had a blind spot for sure for his relationship with Miles, which we see unravel eventually a little bit. And he gets a little clarity eventually.
Yeah, he's totally not cognizant of it because they've been friends for so long. And I think it was just like Miles made me think of Tupac and Juice, where he was just always on edge and always willing to start something. And, you know, I think there's a lot of people in this situation all over the world where you have somebody who's, you know, we always use, pretty much everybody. It's become a term everybody uses. Not really for real, because most people aren't going to do it when it comes to it. But like ride or die, or, you know, snitches get stitches and all these things. It's like ride or die is great in some situations, but in a lot of situations, it's not great. Because Miles came in as a ride or die person to, you know, kick that dude in his ribs, when sometimes ride or die means you should ride away. Like, you should be the person that has some sort of clarity of mind to be able to, like, look, I'm going to be with you. And I feel like ride or die is a better term for if someone's acting out of pocket, you're not necessarily going to bail on them, but you're going to help them or try to be there. But, you know, I don't think if someone's in a fight, I'm going to jump in that fight with them.
Well, yeah, so it was pretty mirrored pretty perfectly. So the fight that got him into jail was that big fight where the customer started it by pushing him, and then Colin reacts and they get in this fight, and then Miles jumps in and makes it even worse. And so then later in the movie, when they're at that hipster party, Miles is already, like, kind of reeling from gentrification in his neighborhood. And then, so they set the scene so perfectly. So it was a shot of 4 houses. The house on the far left and the far right were, like, typical old, like, Victorian homes you would see in the Bay Area. And then the 2 middle houses were the big, like, very boxy, modern, 2-story mansion thing.
Shipping container type houses.
So it was, like, perfectly, right? And so they show up to this party, and it happens to be in one of these modern homes, and they walk in and they're so confused. They don't know what they just walked into. So apparently they're at a hipster party. And this is when he encounters the guy who thinks Miles is being a poser, basically. Right. And so, anyway, so Miles reacts and, like, just starts wailing on the guy. And then the fight, Colin goes and grabs him, and they get everybody to go outside, but then Miles won't stop. And so these guys are just brawling outside, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And so at that point, Colin could have jumped in, and that's what Miles expected him to do, because that's what he always did. Right. So Miles is expecting Colin to jump in and, like, help him beat this guy up. But Colin's just standing there like, I'm 1 day from parole. This is terrible. We shouldn't, you know, stop. He kept trying to get Miles to stop, but he wouldn't. And that's how he is, like, how he's changed or whatever. Right. Like, that's his new how he is. And he's like, I get it now. This is not okay behavior. And so kind of one of the blind spots was kind of, like, revealed, I guess. Right. To him. Even though his ex-girlfriend was like, you need to drop him. Like, whatever. He was like, no, this is my guy. And so I think it was kind of revealed in that moment. He was like, this guy will not stop. Oh, and then Miles pulls out the gun and is just, like, firing into the air. And he's just like, I can't be around this guy. But he does grab him and pull him out of the situation. But he also grabs his gun. Ugh, yeah.
Miles touched way too many guns for somebody who's on parole. Colin. Yeah. I was just like, why do you keep touching guns? That's the number one thing on anyone's mind on any TV show.
The whole movie. Fingerprints. We were yelling at the TV.
Stop touching guns.
I guess I was yelling at the TV.
You know, I think, you just got to know when it's time to call it quits or take a break from people. when it's
Right.
like, hey, you're not really helping me at all.
Right.
You're just making me worse.
But that scene was more of like the juxtaposition of how they handle life now. Like Miles would jump in and then Colin's like, I get it. This is not good. We need to remove ourselves.
Right. But I think, in his blind spot, he still was. Oh, he did way too many things.
He did.
That, it's just like, if one of my friends started beating some guy profusely, I would try to pull him off if I could. And then if he wanted to fight with me, I'd be like, fine, man, I'm just going to leave. And you could just deal with this or the police or whatever on your own. You could beat that guy to death and it's bye. Like I'm not going to, if you're in parole, like,
right.
You can't really get involved in that.
He couldn't risk it, yeah. And so Miles was being dangerous to everyone and then compromising his supposedly BFFs.
Right.
BFF sounds so junior high. Best friend.
His man friend.
Right. Jeopardizing his literal freedom.
The funny thing is like, yeah, they both learned a lot that night, but the funny thing about it is right before that, like an idiot, Miles had bought a gun, and then they were Miles, his wife, and Colin were hanging out in the other room, and then they come in, and Miles' son is playing with the gun that he had bought. And so it's like the whole night is just this compounded ball of nonsense and stupidity. And I think, you've got to go through sometimes really crazy situations to get you to realize what your blind spot is.
Yeah. And then they had a big fight in the parking lot.
And I think his was really realizing that in some ways, like, he doesn't have to prove himself that he is of the culture of Oakland.
Miles?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Because I think that's what he was in some ways trying to do. And realize, like, he doesn't necessarily have to do that. Like, he doesn't have to go hard every time something happens just because he's a white guy to prove himself, And
well, I think that's what he was trying to say, though. That's how he feels. He feels like he has to because...
But I think he learned that he doesn't have to.
Yeah. But you're right. That's what set him off. Like, that's why he was going so bonkers. Oh, because he walked into, this was the greatest thing. He walked in and the hipster guy had the exact same tattoo in the exact same spot. And he just like, that broke his brain. He was like, you could see it. He was just like, who am I? Where am I?
Right. I've definitely been there. Something that I thought like, oh, this is me. This is totally me. And someone's like, hey, this is me. And I'm like, oh.
Right. Because Miles probably had that tattoo since he was 15. You know what I mean? Like, that's his life.
Right.
And this guy he's like, I just moved from Portland. I finally found my home.
9 months ago, and I found my home.
Got this tattoo.
Yeah. Wait, that would be painful.
Poor guy.
Yeah, I think one thing I was wondering is these are different movies, but the same movie. But what do you compare this to The Last Black Man in San Francisco?
I was thinking of the same thing a little bit. I didn't think about how I compare them though. But something made me think of the Last Black Man in San Francisco. What did you think?
I thought it's funny because they're both kind of art-ish movies. This one was more. Somebody said this the other day about what was it? The Fifth Element. Minty was saying that the Fifth Element had this kind of MTV vibe. Mm-hmm. I feel like if that's what you would compare as like Last Black Man in San Francisco was a true like art house movie. There was a lot of like
cinematography
and like artsy. Semblance and all this stuff. Right. And this was more like MTV, like art, but accessible in a way. You could play this and somebody's like, oh, this is, the other one like, why are they talking like that? And why is he doing these things? So I think, they have similar themes. They're obviously totally different movies.
You know what it is? I just remembered. I think it made me think of it when I figured out that these guys were actual friends. And because it's the same thing as... and in
real life, they're actual friends.
Right. And I feel like they both put their life into the movie they made.
Right. Yeah, because, yeah, similar stories. Like, it took them a while to make that movie, and they shot it, I think, in a short amount of time as well. One's San Francisco, one's Oakland, very close. Gentrification, black identity, identity in general, culture, all that type of stuff. So, similar, different movies. But yeah, I thought, yeah, art house versus MTV art house.
Indie.
Yeah.
There's art house and then there's indie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also really love the scenes with this was at the beginning of the movie too, I think. When they're going to the grand opening. We don't know that's what they're at first, but they're in this car and they had just gotten burgers and they're eating food or whatever. And so Miles is complaining about his burger. He takes a bite and like spits it out and I was like, this isn't the same. And then Colin's in the back seat. He's like, oh, look, they're wedge fries now. And this is like our first glimpse of like the changing neighborhood. And so then it pans out and we see they're in the parking lot and it's the grand opening of like the neighborhood burger spot. And so it's called Quick Way. And it's fast food, but he finds out that he didn't specify that he wanted a meat burger. So the default are vegan burgers. And then it's not regular fries anymore. It's all wedge cut fries.
The future is vegan.
Right. So he just flips out over this. He's like, this isn't right. Quick Way doesn't cater. Quick Way doesn't blah, blah, blah. So like his beloved neighborhood spot was gone.
It's been gentrified.
So, yeah, slowly throughout the movie, we see Miles kind of deteriorate because his friend is changing, his neighborhood is changing, everything's changing. Flips out.
I think the other thing about this is the blind spot about adulthood. Like, because I think at the end, Miles hopefully realized, like, I'm a grown man. Like, I have a child.
Yeah.
I have a wife or a girlfriend. I don't know. I didn't look for rings or whatever. But I have a significant other, and I have a kid, and I have responsibilities, and I'm out here playing around like an idiot. And I think, to me, that was part of that act out of, partly, of the fighting and all that, and realizing that you made a bunch of dumb decisions. You know, I don't think he would have gotten that fight if his kid wouldn't have had that gun. If he wouldn't have found his kid with a gun.
Right.
You know, but I think that was him just kind of being like, why is this happening? And then realizing, I guess I did this myself. You know, so.
Well, and his girlfriend wife, she points out, too, even she says, don't you think if you had told me you brought that gun home, I could have told you this would happen.
Right.
Like, our child will find that gun and we don't, things could go bad. And then he kind of realizes, like, I don't have to, like, I need to communicate with this woman. And she, was kind to him.
More kind than I would have been.
Right. Like, I mean, her initial reaction is get out of the house.
Right.
But, he comes back eventually and she's like, okay, what happened to you? She's bandaging him up and then she's talking to him and kind of explaining, like, you need to talk to me and no, guns are not okay in this house, but if you had just told me and not hidden it, I would have told you maybe hiding it under the couch is a bad idea. I don't know where he hid it. I don't know where his kid found it, but obviously he was hiding it somewhere.
Or having it. I think she just thought having it was a bad idea, but she at least could have come up with solutions.
Right. She could have helped. Yeah. She'd be like, you need to sell this, or we need to, if I understand you feel like it's necessary to protect us, let's put it in a safe. You know what I mean? Like something. Yeah. Like they could have been a team about it, and he was so used to being like on his own, I guess.
Well, I guess we kind of know possibly how long they've been together. The kid was like 6 or something, so.
Yeah. So, the other, because we've talked a lot about change and a lot about how that was a big theme. There's another side to the movie. And we learned, like, later when we finally figured out why he went to jail and how Miles was just as much, or not, if not a bigger part of that fight.
Yeah.
But he did not go to jail.
With Miles's character, when he doesn't have to take the fall for that crime, is that no matter what in the United States, he's white and can be presumed to be just a guy, whereas opposed to Colin's character, who he's black, so he's assumed to be the guy, who did it, who started, who instigated it, who pressured Miles into this, And then also, Miles can cover his tattoos and, go anywhere in the United States and be whoever he wants to be, where sometimes, in that case, Colin cannot. So I think that's the thing at the end that or Colin tries to tell Miles is that, yeah, you have a hard time trying to prove yourself amongst, let's say, black people, but I have to prove myself amongst the police and most of the United States. And, it's a hard thing. Like, everybody's got their burdens that have been put on their shoulders. But I think sometimes, essentially white people don't understand that, no matter where we go, we're still black, whether it's a boardroom, a 747 in first class, or the police station. Like, it doesn't matter. So it's kind of a hard thing to understand when you're going through your own problems, and especially as Miles was in the community he was in. But
Well, and we really see Colin struggling with what he witnessed, is the white cop murdering that guy was running, and he yells, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." And then the cop fires 4 and kills the guy. So he's struggling with what to do with that. Like, you can tell he doesn't feel good about... So he didn't want to get involved because he just wanted to get off probation.
Right.
Right. And then, but he also didn't really want to not be involved. Like, you could tell there was some sort of struggle there with, like,
Right.
He felt like he should say something, but he also felt like it wouldn't matter.
Right.
And so, and then it comes to a head at the end when they're at this moving job, and then he finds out he's moving out this lady and her kid. And then, so we kind of realize, like, okay, this woman is leaving her husband. And then we find out that the husband is that cop. And so he sees the picture of the cop and then hears him in the house and goes into the garage where he is, and then...
Worst decision of the movie.
Yeah. This was just... I was so nervous for what was going to happen to his character. But he walks in, and then we find out that he still has this gun. And I would have thought he had thrown it away.
I mean, Colin still has the gun.
Colin still has the gun.
He took off of Miles.
Right. He took Miles' gun when he was throwing a fit at that party and held on to it. And so then, for some reason, he has it on him during his moving job. From the night before, from when he had the fight with Miles to the next day, when he was walking home, this cop stopped, and you could see he was really, like, fearful for his life. For one, he had the gun on him. That's going to get you shot immediately. And then 2, if he's not killed, he doesn't want to go back to jail.
Right.
So this whole...
And then 3, walking while black.
Right, and then 3, walking while black. So he's got all these very real fears going on in his head. He just stops walking. He doesn't say anything. He just stops moving. And then the cop eventually rolls on. So then the next day he shows up for work. He's not in his usual uniform. He's not as friendly with his friend and family before work. Then they get to this job. And so something's already different with him. And then he's there, and he, for some reason, actually is carrying this gun now. And so anyway, he sees the cop, pulls it on him. And then that's when he goes into his rap poetry.
Yeah.
About how the cop doesn't know what fear is. Like, he's like, "Oh, are you afraid of this gun? You don't really know what it's like to be afraid of this. Are you afraid of the trigger? You're not afraid of the trigger." Kind of explaining to the cop, like, how he's feeling. And what that whole experience has done. It's a very tense situation. It was like, I don't think I moved. I'm pretty sure I was breathing, but I was just, like, so scared that he was going to kill the cop was going to kill him, that somebody was going to show up and shoot him from behind. Like, I don't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, that was it was the dumbest scene I've ever seen. Not at the fault of the writers or directors. It's just in actual action, like someone doing that. It's one of the
Right,
dumbest
yeah.
things I've ever seen. And so like Miles comes in and Miles is now thrown off because he's like, wait, I thought you were trying to tell me to chill and now you got a gun pulled on
this
this
is
cop.
where we see how far he's been pushed and how upset he is by what he's experiencing. He's completely flipped to,
Right.
the opposite of what he's trying to be.
And so yeah, he's been struggling with it. And it's interesting because actually when he had all sorts of moments of remembering the time when that guy was shot, but they kept doing when he would run, he would have these flashbacks, which is interesting now that I think about it, because he was trying to run from the problem in a way, like trying to forget it and shake it off, but he couldn't. Like it kept following him. So, yeah, just when he pulled the gun on the cop, I thought the only thing, like, since I don't like spoken word that much, that was the only thing. So he was doing like a spoken word, slam poetry, rap, something, and so that kind of like took me out of it a little bit. But it was still a good scene. It was just interesting. That they did it that way. And I'm sure a ton of people who saw it probably liked it. It's just not really my cup of tea.
I think that's how that actor, that's the most emotion. You know what I mean? Like he emoted a lot out of that. You know what I mean? Like you could see all the anger, you could see all the fear, you could see all the frustration and all of that. And that's how he expressed it all.
Yeah. It was just, I was thinking, like, logically thinking, when did he come up with this rap? Is he doing it off the top of his head? But then how is he doing that when he's so frustrated?
Yeah,
So
it's all stream of consciousness.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if you practice, I guess Eminem could point a gun at somebody really frustrated and come up with a decent rap. But yeah,
You're like analyzing the scene.
Yeah, that's why I don't like watching previews that much to get too far into a movie, because I'll kind of like break things down. But yeah, I thought that scene was pretty crazy. But the other thing I think that was nuts about that is the cop could retaliate. Like you leave and you don't shoot the cop, but then the cop's like, man, that guy tried to humiliate me. I'm gonna go find him and kill him.
But that was like that.
I guess he can't really find him and kill him because he's already killed one person.
That was a little bit haunting too at the end. So eventually Colin puts the gun away. Actually, he hands the gun back to Miles, thankfully.
Which Miles should have held it the whole time.
Right. But then the cop says, he looked devastated anyway, but he's looking like really upset, obviously. And so he says, I didn't mean to. And Miles just says, are you sure? Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, that's what this whole movie is. Like,
right.
Your blind spot and preconceived situations. So I was like, anyway, that just felt like, what was it? Like a haunting? Like, are you sure?
Yeah.
If those were real people, that would have stuck in his brain for the rest of his life.
Right.
Like, are you sure? Just that little cry, are you sure?
You did it?
It's 3 words. Are you sure?
He gaslighted that man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it lived up to what I expected from the movie. There was a lot more twists and a lot more suspense than I thought there was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a roller coaster where I know exactly, like, this is a wooden roller coaster. This is what they do. But then it's like, nope, we do loops. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. There's a lot of loops. So I like this. I like the suspense. I thought that was good.
I should have looked this up, but I just remembered that. Did you notice how many portraits there were in this movie? And I wonder if it's because part of the motivation of these guys making this movie is because they felt like Oakland was never, there was always something missing in movies about Oakland or set in Oakland, that they didn't feel Oakland was being portrayed, like, given justice, I guess, or portrayed properly. So that was kind of one reason they made the movies. They wanted to tell their Oakland, and put it out there. So I kind of wondered if that was part of, like, all the portraits, because that one photographer guy, they went to move him, and he was telling them about his pictures in his gallery and how he had superimposed a photo of a neighborhood over that had been built over the tree that used to be there. So he would superimpose the tree into the current neighborhood or bridge or parking lot or whatever.
Right.
And so he was kind of like showing the old and the new.
Yeah.
And then he also had all these portraits of people from the neighborhood. And they were all looking to camera, and he said you have to look people in the eye to know them, which then you try to get them to do and they wouldn't do it. But
They
there
did
was
it for a second, and they
did it for a
goofed.
second, right? But there was portraits there. There was portrait in the other house they went to move. There was somewhere else that there was portraits.
Yeah.
I just wonder if those are like people from Oakland, like they really just got.
I would hope so.
Well, I don't know. They could just be prop photos.
No,
I don't know.
I'm just saying. I hope so.
Yeah,
That's all.
But I would think so. Yeah, that those were real portraits.
Because then you're not repping Oakland.
Right, you're not telling the story.
You're repping Shutterstock.
Right. So.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Wayne.
But I didn't look it up.
Wayne Knight was in there, the guy who plays Newman.
Yeah.
And tried to steal the eggs and got eaten in Jurassic Park. Yeah, he's the photographer. I think it looked really great. I was telling Michelle that. I was like, he had a cool John Goodman and Big Lebowski type beard and Neil Brennan sunglasses or glasses. So I was like, wow, that's good to see him in there. And then what's her name from Martin was in there.
Oh yeah, Tisha.
Tisha, yeah, Campbell. It's funny because her last name is Martin. Tisha Campbell Martin.
Yeah.
She married Terrence Martin, I think that's the name. But yeah, it was great to see them in there, just little cameos in there. So
Yeah.
Good movie.
Yeah. So I agree with the tomatoes. It got a 96 or 8 or something. The audience score was a little lower.
Yeah, I give it like an 80 something.
I'm up there. I give it a high 90.
High 90s?
Yeah, I think it was really
It's
good.
better than Parasite.
No, well, I don't know. Completely different movies.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for Blindspotting.
That's all for the spot.
Yeah.
But we want to give a shout out to our supporter, Ben Merritt.
Ben Merritt on the Patreon.
Been holding us down. We
appreciate
it. We're trying to get you episodes early like we promised. Life's been crazy. So we're trying to get them as soon as we make them. And check out his app, Chaos Lab. Look it up on the Android App Store.
It's a game, right?
Yeah, not an app. Well, it is an app technically, but it's a game. It's a game, not an app. On iOS, Android. I know in this times with everything that's going on, it is very hard, and people are worrying where their money's going to come from, as we are learning today. As I got an email, so I know if you're doing well and you like the podcast, kick us $1 if you want. Go over to patreon.com/ hey, we just saw a movie.
How do you spell Patreon?
P-A-T. Google it.
Oh. I think it's Patreon.
If you just look up, sure. I don't know.
Well, people may not.
If there's not words in front of me, but people have Google.
Okay.
You can type in. I've typed in all sorts of insane things, like animation heartbeat GIF. And
Okay.
it just comes up.
Well,
It's coming.
Patreon.com/ hey, we just saw a movie.
That's what I said.
I'm reiterating because we ran off topic.
You ran.
Okay. Hey,
Trying to get
check
me
out
to
our
Google
website.
stuff.
Go to our website, heywejustsawmovie.com.
And
Instagram.
hey, we just saw a movie.com.
And Twitter.
Just saw a movie.
It's a little different. You gotta pay
They
attention.
forced us to chop it down. They said, "Why so many letters?" And we said, "Shut up." So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your pa, stay safe. Wear your masks. Wash your hands.
Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. Wash your hands.
Dr. Fauci 2020.
2020. Bye.